Hello. The name is Daman Dev Sood, your host for my weekly show, My Top Tips, every Wednesday, 9 a.m. IST. Today's discussions are based on a call received from a client about 10 days, 2 weeks ago. That Daman, there seems to be no end to this war. So, what are your views? What shall we do? We had about 15 minutes discussion, and after that, I developed a full length blog to help you all, not only that particular client. So today's discussions, I'm saying 10 tough questions to be asked by all CMTs without any delay. BCM is an uncomfortable truth. And these are uncomfortable questions, tough questions. I'm going to read quickly the blog and then spend few minutes on those 10 questions specifically. When news of a war breaks out anywhere in the world, the first concerns are naturally humanitarian. Loss of lives, loss of livelihoods, supply chain collapsing, essential resources running out, energy supplies tightening. These fears are real. Yet, interestingly, in many recent conflicts, the situation has not unfolded in the catastrophic way many initially feared. Perhaps this is what some analysts call precision warfare: targeted strikes, controlled escalation, and limited geographic spread. But that does not mean organizations should feel reassured. Because while the immediate impact may appear limited, the duration and ripple effects of war are deeply unpredictable. And that is where organization resilience must begin. We must admit that war is not a typical BCM scenario. Business continuity plans are usually built around scenarios such as cyber incidents, natural disasters, technology outages, facility disruptions, and pandemics. But war sits in an entirely different category of disruption. No realistic BC plan can fully account for prolonged geopolitical conflict, global supply chain disruption, energy shortages, economic instability, government interventions such as rationing or lockdowns. In such situations, continuity planning eventually reaches its limits. And that is an uncomfortable but important truth. For this reason, I keep repeating we need to be reasonable and practicable, and that BCM is not BAU, and that BCM does not guarantee no failures. At some point, if the underlying resources disappear, oil, gas, electricity, mobility, or food supply, even the best BCM arrangements will eventually fail, stall. The problem is that we wait or keep waiting until there is a crisis. One worrying pattern seen in many organizations is that if there is no immediate operational impact, leaders assume there is no crisis yet. No disruption, no BCM invocation, no crisis management team meeting. This is risky thinking. A crisis management team meeting called after the crisis hits is already reactive. In reality, a geopolitical shock like war should trigger anticipatory leadership. The right response is to convene the crisis management team early. Even if there is no disruption yet, organizations should consider calling their crisis management team immediately when such events unfold. Not because there is a crisis today, but because there might be one tomorrow. The objective of that meeting should be structured anticipation. The CMT should ask and deliberate questions like what could happen next in the next 24 hours, next 3 days, next week, or in the next fortnight and a month. What could the impact be on us? This needs to be discussed. The impact may be on energy supply, logistics and mobility, vendor availability, workforce safety, and financial exposure. The third point to be kept in mind is what dependencies could break first. The most obvious one in a prolonged geopolitical conflict is energy. Oil and gas production could decline. Crude supplies to refineries may reduce. Refinery outputs could fall. Not because refineries themselves are disturbed, but simply because the crude stops arriving. This could cascade into fuel shortages, logistics disruptions, reduced electricity generation in fossil fuel dependent economies, restricted mobility. Even organizations that do not directly consume fuel on a scale will feel the secondary effects. And then there may be a domino effect. If energy supply tightens significantly, the governments may introduce measures such as fuel rationing, controlled electricity supply, movement restrictions, temporary lockdowns to extend resource availability. Organizations may again restore to work from home arrangements. But work from home brings its own challenges. No home or remote workplace can match the physical and information securities of office. On top of that, there may be productivity variability and uneven infrastructure availability. And even homes ultimately depend on the same resources electricity, fuel, logistics, which may themselves be under pressure. I'm presenting a webinar during the BCI BCAW Plus R 2026, starting next month on 21st of May at 5:15 p.m. IST. My webinar topic is Turn Your Dead and Static Risk Registers into Live and Living Ones. Please register and attend. I'm going to be talking about this domino effect. One disaster or crisis leading to next in a systemic way. While we have been discussing this scenario, started from a call from a client about 2 weeks ago, I would like to continue to say this leads to a difficult admission. In extreme geopolitical scenarios, continuity may eventually give way to survival mode. At some point, organizations may simply run out of the resources required to continue operations. This is scary, but needs to be understood, admitted, documented, known to all relevant interested parties. And that is precisely why leadership must act early, not to prevent war, which is beyond their control, but to prepare stakeholders, interested parties, mentally and operationally. Early communication is very important. After deliberation, organizations should issue clear and responsible communication internally to employees, externally to customers, partners, regulators, and other interested parties. The message should not create panic, but it should acknowledge reality. The situation is evolving as it is. Risks are being monitored if being monitored by you. Contingency thinking is underway if it is. And disruptions cannot be ruled out, whether you think or not, whether you act or not. Disruptions cannot be ruled out. This must be admitted and documented and communicated. Transparent communication helps stakeholders prepare mentally and practically. I also draw attention to another blog. All blogs are freely available, readily available on my website, www.damandevsood.com. Just one-time registration is required. The hard truth is that organizational resilience begins with personal resilience. Ultimately, organizations are only as resilient as the people who run them. If individuals are unprepared, emotionally, mentally, and practically, organizational resilience frameworks cannot function. In prolonged global disruptions, personal resilience becomes the foundation of organizational resilience, and leaders must recognize this. My final thoughts: war may not immediately disrupt your organization, but waiting for visible disruption before thinking about resilience is not leadership, it is hesitation. In situations like these, the role of leadership is simple but profound. Anticipate early, deliberate honestly, communicate transparently, and prepare people mentally. Because sometimes resilience is not about continuing operations forever. Sometimes it is about preparing everyone for the possibility that we may not. The 10 questions, difficult, tough, uncomfortable questions that I'm strongly recommending every CMT must sit today and deliberate. Have you issued initial communication? And do not go. This is not the time to go deep into finding why not if you have not. Just answer the question honestly. Bring this out on table. Have you created the so what or what next scenario for next 24 hours, 3 days, fortnight, and a month? And are you holding daily meetings around this global situation? This daily can be changed to frequent, and the frequency needs to be decided by you only. Third, difficult question: have you drawn your worst case scenario? How many applications may be down? How many employees may be missing, sick, hurt, deceased? How many commitments will you miss? What will be the number of penalties? The amount and size of those penalties? What will be the total loss? What will be total expense you can make to deal with this situation? How many days will you survive with 75%, 50%, or 25% work productivity? Fourth question. Fourth, tough, uncomfortable question. How much did you lose in terms of time, effort, lives in the last big disaster that you faced? For example, COVID-19 pandemic. Fifth question. How much will you give yourself on managing that last big disaster. Once again, for example, COVID-19 pandemic on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the best. Sixth uncomfortable question. Are the learnings from that last big disaster documented? I have been struggling to find this from any organization, specifically about COVID-19 pandemic. Everyone did great job. Everyone managed. But is an incident report or after incident report, lessons learned report available or written, documented? What were those lessons? Have those lessons been acted upon? Question 7 is, have you implemented all improvements noted while managing that last big disaster? Uncomfortable question number 8. Do you have resources to manage a crisis of similar size now? Question 9 is, have you made provisions to spend the same amount of money now if the current global scenario issues escalates, scales up to the same size? And the last 10th question, 10th uncomfortable question to be asked, to be answered, to be deliberated by the CMTs today. When will you issue the next communication internally and externally to customers, suppliers, vendors, partners, other third parties, regulators, and citizens? These are 10 tough, hard hitting questions that CMTs fear being asked and answering. These are uncomfortable questions, but resilience begins with uncomfortable conversations. If your organization wants someone to play devil's advocate in such discussions, I'm always happy to help. Just let me know. With this, I would like to close today's discussion, which was almost around 15 minutes. Logging off, your host, Daman Dev Sood, from my weekly show, My Top Tips, every Wednesday, 9 a.m. IST. I look forward to seeing you all Wednesday. Thank you. Bye bye.